Hey guys, I just wanted to do a little Cuelist walkthrough. So right now I have There's No Way, the song, pulled up so that I can give us a little bit of a little walkthrough through the specifics of like what are we looking at here. So I'm going to maximize this window so that we can see everything. And you'll notice that there's a lot going on here. So we have a couple different columns going across, and then everything's stacked up. So this is a Q list, list 1498 in our show file. Some programmers and designers will refer to it as a Q stack, which is why it kind of stacks up vertically as you're running through. And so I just kind of wanted to go over what some of this is and explain kind of what we're going for here. So to start, we're going to start on the left. So we've got our number column, and that's pretty self-explanatory. This is just a number denoting each queue. So this is Q1 in the list, Q2, Q3, Q4, Q5, all the way through to 16, and then end isn't really a queue, but depending on if you're using a queue list as something like this or as an effect, sometimes the end does matter. In the next column over it's called weight. This is our weight column. So most of them are empty, but you'll see that the arrow is telling us like this is the initial one, and then this follow command in the weight column means that queue number 2 will trigger as soon as queue number 1 is done running. So it immediately follows the previous queue. Everything else doesn't have anything because there is no automatic queuing going on here. You just have to trigger it. But typically the way that I set up these stacks is you'll notice in the name column at the beginning of most songs that I program, there is a Q1 is called preset, or it'll be called mark, and that is a like starting point with starting values for colors, positions, intensities, depending on what the song is. So you might not necessarily see what's in this preset. So let me queue it up. So if you notice, as soon as this got to 100% and was done running, it jumped to Q2. And that's because of the follow command. I'll make it go back so we can see on the visualizer, we can see that this preset doesn't have a lot going on, but it does have the lighting up. The front lighting is up for the band. There are no LEDs, there are no movers that are on yet. But the other thing that's important to notice on Q1 is that all the way over here in this macro column, there's a whole bunch of stuff. And when we get to macros, I will explain what those are doing. But for now, the preset queue is really just a spot where I can make sure that colors change from song to song without being seen, that beam settings for movers can change without being seen flicking through or anything like that in transitions. And then also it's a spot for me to queue up all these macro commands that are important for a lot of different things. The name of the queue in this name column, I name these aside from the preset. I name these according to what the voice track in the loops is saying. So that the operators know when they should be going to that queue, and it's kind of like extra confirmation. So as soon as the song starts, you'll hear it say intro 2, 3, 4, and the queue is meant to be triggered on the 1 of the next beat. So if you think about it a little bit musically, it would be intro 2, 3, 4, cue it. Chorus 2, 3, 4, cue it. So we're not trying to cue when you hear the word in the track, but you're trying to cue when the band is responding to the word, because you really are, when you're queuing through a list, especially during worship, you really are another member of the band in a way. So it's important to just be paying attention to the click track and have the right feel with your cues. So for example, I'll bring our intro up. And also you'll notice on this one specifically, it says intro, and then there's a little slash verse. So it'll cue intro 2, 3, 4. There's an intro. And then at some point it'll say verse 2, 3, 4. A lot of the time the way I name it, if it's in the name column, you should just stay here. So you won't trigger again once you get into this cue. You're not going to go into the next cue until you hear chorus. And then even though after the chorus is done, you might hear the word vamp, you're not actually going to move. This cue is still intended for that. And you wait until you hear verse 2, drums in. Then you cue into Q4. Same for build. And then you would hear hits. You stay there for the hits. And then when it says chorus all in, that's when you cue again. And that's kind of so on and so forth. That's the way that it's intended to be operated. In the comment column, I will often try to give either the first line of the lyrics of that section or other information. So I might put a count, like a guide for how to count, which I didn't do on this one, but I probably should. That way you can get the feel of when you're supposed to be cueing, because it's kind of like a rhythmic thing. And sometimes I'll put little notes in there, like for the build, for the hits with the band, use the aura hits button, which is a function keys command, which I will get to in another video. And sometimes I'll put notes in here for adjusting house lights and things like that. So it's definitely important to keep an eye on the comment column, because there's a lot of information in there that's just helpful for you to know that you're in the right place and what to do while you're there. Especially for songs, I'll give that first line of the lyrics so that if you maybe don't know or are unsure of if you heard the right cue in the track, there's a little extra confirmation. This next column is the fade time column. And so what that does is that shows you how long it's taking to transition. So you'll notice, right, we're still sitting here on intro verse. The lights are still staying where they're at. When I cue into the chorus look, you'll see that percentage bar will be loading up over here. It'll take 4 seconds for everything to change in the way that it's supposed to get fully into that cue. And so you notice the moving lights have come on, and it took them it was a slow fade from being completely off to being on as much as they are. And that's so that things aren't abruptly popping on and off, and it helps the atmosphere just feel the way it's supposed to be in that moment. It's not supposed to be sudden. It's supposed to be more of a gradual build up. Same thing for the next one. You'll see the lights fade off again, and it took them 3 seconds to fade back off. Delay time is the next column. So in a lot of these there isn't a delay, but for example right here there's a combination of some things doing things with no delay and some things waiting 2 seconds to do something. So fade time, you can think of as soon as it's triggered, it takes 3 seconds to get from where it was to where it's supposed to be. Delay time, if there was a delay time here, it would say wait. For example, whatever has the 2 second delay is going to wait 2 seconds and then start a 4 second fade. So it'll actually take 6 seconds to do in total to do what it's supposed to do, but it doesn't do anything for the first 2, and all of the fading is on the last 4 of those 6. So that's kind of the way delay works, whether it's intensity fading up and fading down, or waiting, or waiting to move and change positions. All of that works the same way. The mark column is telling you if anything is what marking is on HOG is moving while it's off. So you can set it so like if my movers are supposed to be pointed one direction during the chorus and another direction during the verse, they will wait, or sorry, they'll be pointed one direction during the verse and another direction during the build. They'll wait till they completely fade out down to 0 and are off so that there is no beam. And then they will move to where they're supposed to be in the builds queue, even though you're not there yet, so that when they come on for the build queue and they're in a different place, you didn't see the movement of the beam. So that's what that mark is supposed to be. Path, I rarely mess with, and then macros, we use a lot. They're very important. They do a lot of different things, and there's a lot of different macros. And I'm going to do a separate video on just them by themselves. But they do a lot of different things like switch pages, jump to the next list, control hazers, control house lighting settings, control Resolume stuff for the epic strips in Bel Air. They control the back wall lighting in Rising Sun because they have an uplit back wall. Same for Middle River. All kinds of stuff like that. And so what I'm able to do is while I'm queuing through different things, I can also put different commands in here that will happen in parallel to everything that's going on in here. So that's what the macros are for, is to be able to do other things on the side without having to adjust any programming that's in the song itself. Alrighty, I hope that helps. In the next video, I'm going to actually use the click track and cue through some things so you can see how it's supposed to be operated based on what I explained in this one.